Hey, how's it going? Today we are going over packaging. Like, what is packaging? So, about a year ago, I stopped doing the Friday packaging class, and today we're going to get started doing it again. And we're going to just break down what is packaging. We're going to talk about the roles of packaging. We're going to go through everything that is packaging, and every week we're going to get a little bit more in depth, learning how to design it, how it gets manufactured, all the different production processes, and I'm pretty stoked about it. So do me a favor, let me know if you're watching, where you're watching from, if you're listening, where you're listening from, and we'll get started here in 1 second. Let's go. All right. So today we're going to go over the role of packaging. So this is basically week one, day one. You know nothing about packaging. Let's just start that way, right? I always like to start a project not knowing anything about it. I'm not going to take anything I've learned in the past. I'm just going to start fresh from scratch. So, what is packaging? Right? Packaging comes in a lot of different forms. Packaging comes in everything from boxes, right? Pretty standard stuff. Boxes, um, you know, different size boxes, different types of boxes. Comes in glass, bottles, shapes. These labels are packaging. Some people argue that labels are not packaging. Some people do. These little vials, right, with the little eyedroppers. The way that you're transporting product is packaging. And I would say that packaging extends beyond your primary, right? So this is primary. Um, Primary packaging is when the product is contained within a vessel, right? So in this case, this vessel gives the product shape, right? If it's a liquid, if it's a powder, it's being held by packaging. That's primary packaging. Now there's secondary packaging. Now, if this bottle, this little eyedropper goes into this box to get on shelf, this is secondary packaging. This is equally as important, but it's not giving the product shape. It's just helping transport and communicate to the consumer. Now, if I'm a store, I'm ordering 10 of these, they're going to put that into a carton that's going to have all my markings on it, import, export, all that detail on there, and it's going to ship. And it's going to arrive at my store. I'm going to unpack that box and take these guys out to put on shelf. That carton is your tertiary packaging. And then there's also, if that case of 10 comes in a master carton, a bigger carton that holds 5 cases of 10, and then that gets palletized, like all these different things are packaging. And a lot of times we're seeing your palletized product is going to be shrink wrapped, right? There's plastic wrapping it together so that it stays on the pallet and doesn't fall off when it's going in a truck, that it's vibrating, that it's staying all intact and doesn't shift and create issues. That shrink wrap is also considered packaging, right? We don't see it as consumers, but it's definitely a component of packaging. I know just recently there were some issues in Europe where they eliminated plastic or they added fines to plastic that included shrink wrap. So brands that were shipping products in weren't allowed to bring products in, and that caused some supply chain issues in Europe because they weren't allowed to bring in shrink wrapped pallets. So all these different things really span packaging. So if we're talking about the different types of packaging, let's kind of just get into it really quick. And these shows are going to be really fast. They're going to be 15 minutes tops. So any questions that you've got, throw them in the comments. If you're watching afterwards, throw that in the comments. But let's take a look at boxes. Right now, we're talking about like product boxes. You've seen these, Apple boxes, whether it's a phone or a mouse. Everybody loves how slowly that releases. Right, you can kind of hear that too. It's just like a nice little vacuum. Right, and it's got that release. This is basically a 2-piece box. Right, there's one piece below. The second piece is the lid. It's a matter of the friction fit that's happening here, the amount of air that's allowed to transfer from outside to inside as you open it. These boxes are extremely popular. People love these. What do they love about this? They love the sharp edges. You've got 90-degree corners. That's not always the case with boxes. It just depends on how they're made. Then, of course, they love the release, which is just a matter of tolerance, the fit for the base and the lid. These two components are made completely separate. So when they come together, it's randomized. It's not like they make one base and one lid for each other. They make them completely separate and then they just throw them together. There has to be a tolerance there. The thing with these two, the other thing people love about this is the way that it slides out. The reason that this slides out is because it has a nice matte lamination, which is a plastic film, which allows it to reduce the amount of friction so it slides out nicely. When we're talking about packaging, the current trend is sustainability. I know Apple's working on eliminating plastic from their packaging. That film is one of them. It's going to impact that release. We'll see what happens there. But this is a rigid box, a two-piece rigid box. What else can you do with packaging? Here's another example. This is Sonos, their Roam and their new packaging series, right? It's a two-piece box as well. This has no lamination. This has no plastic. You can hear that and feel that. This, though, is different than this box. Even though it's a two-piece box, this is a chip board, which is a rigid board. And then the paper is wrapped around it, wrapped to the inside. It's glued to the outside. The paper is glued to the outside of the chipboard and wrapped to the inside. And then the inside also has another paper in there as well. So this I can't break down without like tearing it and breaking it. This one is actually a corrugated fiber board. So I can take the pieces apart. You can see in here, I hate to tear this guy apart, but you can see how these flaps are going to come in. This thing can lay out completely flat. Let's see. And it's like an F flute that is folded. I think I got it. There we go. Right. So it's just like an Amazon box, right? It's corrugated fiberboard. It's the same brown. The outside has a nice different sheet of color on the outside, but this is the same stuff that you get from Amazon. Difference is that this is a lot thinner. It's definitely dense. This is like an E flute, and I'm just guessing, but this construction allows the box to completely break down. So different construction than these. This is not chipboard that's wrapped like this one is, where I can't break it down. This is actually just corrugated board that's assembled to feel and look the same as this. Except this is going to be a lot more sustainable because it is corrugated board. There's no plastic on it. This recycles anywhere. And then you've got a nice little insert in here that's a molded fiber. Right, so this molded fiber insert is shaped to the product. And it's paper as well. So the entire pack, minus the product, obviously, can be recycled anywhere. In the same vein with boxes, you've got folding boxes, right? So this is a folding board, something, let's say this is probably like a 300, maybe like a 280. It's not super thick. And that's in GSM. When you look at a paper board, when you look at a paper book from your favorite paper manufacturer, this happens to be Fedrigoni, they'll list out, 200 GSM, 120 GSM, 310 GSM. That's what they're talking about. It's grams per square meter. There's a way to measure that anybody can do, which is super easy. But, that's what this is. This is just folding board. It's printed on the outside. It's got an adhesive label on here. Then it's printed on the inside, multiple colors. But this is not going to be as strong as this. But the product that's going in here doesn't necessarily need that kind of strength. This is something that's going to be a little bit easier. It's sort of like this is a little bit thinner than like your cereal box. Right? But with packaging, we're always looking for ways to eliminate adhesives, plastics. They've got this construction, which requires no adhesives and no films to put it together. You assemble it quickly, like I just showed you. And then this flap goes in, and then this tucks in. Gives you a really nice, smooth bottom. That's why you would want to do something like this, is you got a nice, smooth bottom with no fold, no die cuts, no tabs tucking in. It's a really clean presentation for a cube. This maxes out at a certain size because of the sheet size, and then also because of how unwieldy something like this can become. So in terms of the way that the industry is evolving, is we're really moving into more sustainability, which is going to require you to understand structure, engineering, materials. And these are things that we'll talk about in future episodes. But in this one, we're just kind of just doing a quick overview of like what packaging is, right? So we've talked about boxes. We've touched on primary, secondary, tertiary packaging. These are the terms that you're going to want to know as well. For these items, if you're a startup and you're looking to put your product in a eyedropper, a bottle, even a can, a lot of times you have to find what is stock and available. So what's available at the printer, right? The people that are going to do the printing on the bottle, they have thousands of products in their warehouse that you can pick from. You don't always have to customize. I know speaking to Alex Center on the Unboxed podcast years ago, he was telling us how when they launched a new product with Coke, they just went with stock products, with stock packaging, with stock cans, stock bottles, because it's really expensive, even for a brand like Coke, to launch a new shape every single time without knowing if this is actually going to work. So if you're a startup, definitely look at stock. Don't always have to customize every single thing. Then, there's also cans, right? So this is primary because it gives the product inside the shape. I love this can. This is Arnold Armless Palmer, which they got sued by the Arnold Palmer Foundation, and then they changed the name of this product from Armless Palmer to Dead Billionaire, which I think is hilarious. But let me know if you're into liquid death, right? So as a packaging designer, if you're a graphic designer moving into packaging design, you've got to learn how to print on cans. We'll kind of go over that as well. Printing on cans is completely different than printing on paper. You're limited. There's different types of printing that go on cans, and then there's also film that can be wrapped, shrink wrapped onto cans. So that gives you a lot of other ways to print, but then it's not the most sustainable, right? Talking about trends and sustainability, we've got to figure out the way to eliminate the most amount of waste. So as a packaging designer, printing on cans, something you got to learn about, something we'll talk about. You're really limited on what you can, what you can't do on these. But then it's also coming up with new ways to interact with your product, right? So packaging isn't just about using what's out there. It's about coming up with new ways to interact with the product. So let's say liquid death, right? The way that I'm interacting with this is I've got to pop this thing open and drink it like a can, like we've been doing for many, many years. Here comes, these guys. These guys, I don't have their name on here, but these guys completely reinvented how we interact with cans. Right? So instead of having that little mouth that you have on this actually allows you to take the entire top of the can off and then drink like you were from a glass. Then not only can you do that, when you're done with it, you can actually rinse it out, reuse it if you're doing water, if you're at a concert. You don't have to buy more and more product. You can just refill this if you wanted to. Obviously, you can't refill it with Coke, but you can refill it with like water or anything else like that. But super easy. This thing and this lip is what they've innovated. The rest of the can is the same exact can as the other product, right? So as a packaging designer, you can change the way that people interact with packaging because packaging is all about interaction. It's all about how you, as the consumer, arrive at the product, the different steps in there in terms of accessibility. This may be a little easier to open for someone than this, where you have to actually dig your nail in and pop that open. But this has been around long enough that I'm sure there's ways to get into this that people have innovated a little bit differently than what you would typically think of. But seeing something like this is like it changes the way that we interact with the product completely. For beer, for soda, for a variety of different products, that's a killer solution. Then we can look at bottles, right? So in terms of stock, like this is a stock shape, but then you've got the label, right? The label that goes on here that communicates what is the product, how to use it. And this is Mickey Mix, which is the Michelada mixer. And this label actually has a texture on it. So it feels like the walls in Mexico where you would see, this type of printing or painting on the walls of restaurants and stores. But then this is also packaging, right? This little shrink wrap, this little secure label is also packaging. as a designer, you've got to create these colors to make sure that they match with these colors. This is plastic. This is paper. There's so many different things that happen between this printer and this printer to get these colors to match that are really critical. So again, if you're a brand out there, you're looking to start doing your packaging, you've got to figure out how to communicate from one printer to the other printer, make sure that they're collaborating, they have the same targets. Otherwise, you're going to get one orange on one element of your packaging and a different orange on another element of your packaging. Let's take a quick second here. All right, let's take a quick second to talk about idpdirect.com. Go right to that website, download the design guides, the sustainability guides, the recyclable icon guide, which basically lists out all the different icons. It gives them to you in vectors. You can drop them right into your artwork right now, today, and go right into production. All right, back to the pod. All right, so then the other way that you've got packaging is they're called seeding kits, marketing kits, influencer kits, right? This is the limited edition run of packaging that goes out to create some buzz around your product. If you're a startup, this is a great way to get the word out for your packaging. You don't have to order hundreds of thousands. You can just do 100. These are going to be a lot more expensive than anything else you're going to produce because of the low run and that you're not hitting MOQs for different suppliers, right? So as an example, like here's a seeding kit for an invitation for Lady Gaga. See the way that this thing opens, and then the invitation's actually hanging here in this clear product, right? There's only a few hundred of these ever made. These went out to specific people to get into the event to interact with her. But that particular product is what was used to create buzz around the event. People shared it on social. It was in the news. It just went everywhere. And it created that FOMO, right? People wanted to access this. People wanted to go in there, be part of the event. And it all began with the packaging, right? So if you're, let's say you're the Mika Mix and you want to launch a new product, maybe you're doing smaller bottles. Instead of just doing the smaller bottles and trying to blast out all sorts of social media posts, you can create a smaller box that holds maybe the 3 bottles in a glass or just the 3 bottles. And when you open it, it gives you, doesn't have to be a pop-up, but it's about the layered experience, right? It could be you open it, there's a message, there's a panel that lifts up, it reveals one bottle, it reveals one can, then the next one, then the next one after that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can create something fun and exciting through packaging that people are going to receive and then they're going to share. And when they share it, it spreads your message across their network. So what do we do? Let's go just kind of quick recap. We talked about the role of packaging, primary, secondary, tertiary, industry evolution. We're moving into sustainability. That's, I say we're pretty much there, but there's still a lot of brands out there that can use a lot of help to reduce the amount of packaging they're using, eliminate the amount of plastic that they're using, or even just be educated on what they're doing and how they can do it better. Current trends, we're seeing a lot of plastic elimination, kind of like what we talked about with Apple, how they're getting rid of plastic in their packaging. Things like this, small products in, eyedroppers and those types of things. From a sustainability standpoint, it's really about reusability. These guys are a little bit too small to recycle no matter what material they are. That becomes a challenge. But these are things that we're talking about in the industry. Then the packaging design process. That's what we're going to cover. Next is how do you design packaging? We'll go through the sketch phase. We'll go through the prototyping phase, the testing phase, and then ultimately we'll get into materials and substrates, right? We kind of talked about materials here, rigid board, lamination, folding carton, glass, all these different things and how to bring them all together here where this particular component has, rigid board, it's got folding board, it's got, acetate, and then it's got Corey underneath, like how to bring all these things together to create one single experience. We'll go through all of that stuff. So if you got anything out of this episode, do me a favor, hit subscribe, hit the bell, whatever it is that it shows up on your screen. Do me that favor, leave me a comment. I appreciate the comment here from Packaging Scientist. Trying to break this down because I know there's a lot of communication out there in packaging that is confusing. There's a lot of manufacturers, a lot of designers, there's a lot of brands, and everybody's doing something a little bit different and trying to stand out. what happens is there's a lot of confusion that happens because everybody's using different terms for the same things. So let's just try to simplify it and get started. What I do leave you with is do me a favor in the comments after you've watched this. Let me know what your favorite packaging is. What's the one pack that you love? Doesn't matter if it's like a Taco Bell wrapper or if it's, the key fob box for your new Tesla truck. All right, guys. Other than that, I'm going to wrap up here and I'll see you next week. Like I said, do me a favor. Yeah, we do overcomplicate stuff. So thanks so much. Do me a favor, leave in the comments any questions you've got on packaging, any type of material. We'll talk about bags, everything else up in the upcoming episode. Thanks again, guys.